So thanks for joining us this morning. It's this morning for me. We're going to run through our P6-Reporter software tool. Today, I'm joining you, Nicole Jardin, not from Calgary, but from Montreal. And I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald. Doing the heavy lifting, the actual demonstration of the software live is Marilyn Backstrom, and she's joining us from Edmonton. And she's one of our senior implementation specialists with huge amount of amazing experience in P3, V2, P3, and of course, all the way up to P6 now. So let's first touch on why we built P6-Reporter. So years ago, we actually built our own dashboarding tool. It was called EP Dashboard. And it's at least, I'd say 15 to maybe even close to 20 years that we had built that tool. It's because we needed better reporting capability. And so we built that. We built that in the Flex platform, which was Adobe. And then quite a few years ago now, they had a dispute with Apple. They open sourced it. So that technology essentially faded into the sunset. Now, more and more companies were using more vanilla out-of-the-box dashboarding. So we moved into P6-Reporter. So I'm going to explain what that is. It's a tool that pulls the data from P6 with what we call snapshots. And then those snapshots are what we report on in a third-party tool like Power BI or like Tableau. And Marilyn will show you a bit of those today, but it's not limited to those. Those are just quite common ones being used in many companies. So that's what we're going to show you today. So the common struggle really is getting all the fantastic data that we've worked so hard to put together in P6 out to a wider audience than just the scheduling team. Because the whole point of all that data is to communicate when people are supposed to be where and what they're supposed to be doing, the order they're supposed to be doing things in. So it truly is a communication platform, yet we have only the schedulers using it in so many cases. So that's the struggle that everyone has, pretty much everyone. So before I jump too much further, I wanted to ask a quick question. How do you get reporting data from P6? How do you do it? So if some of you have been on our website, we share these statistics. And so it's pretty interesting to see how others are doing it. Okay, so all the statistics, we bundle those statistics up every few months and we put them out on our website. So if you want to go ahead and answer, great, and I'll share it in just a second. So what we found, most common, people throw it out into Excel and they have charts and graphs in Excel, which is fine, but it's not self-serve. It's not, I need to go look at something and I can get it. Now, today, no one's answering with Access Database. So that's in a way a good thing. So that's falling by the wayside, it looks like, but Excel and Power BI. So that is a pretty common thing that we're starting to see. Now, pulling the data into Excel before you put it into another reporting tool has its own problems. So I wanted to talk about that because some of the data is pretty complicated depending on what you want to report. And pulling it out cleanly, meaning not missing anything, can be a challenge. Pulling it out if you want to do multiple projects. So if some of you run exports, you know that exports go into multiple Excel files. So that's a pain in the neck. So if your data is even a little complicated with multiple projects, multiple resources, expenses, it starts to get difficult to pull that data. And you don't want to lose that data. When you've got a more streamlined approach, you can have even more fantastic data in P6. So you need to think about that. And pulling it to Excel yourself, yes, it's certainly an option. Some people take back-end queries into the database, not a good idea. And you can't get all the data that way. Some of the data, the computer or P6 actually calculates it when it puts it onto the screen. So it's not actually stored in the back end. Okay, so there is data that you can't even get that way. And if you try and get it, you have to be quite clever on how to recalculate it. And we've seen clients have the wrong calculations because they've tried that strategy. So as I mentioned, getting the data out to the extended team is the biggest challenge, right? We want others to be using the data and have it at their fingertips. So that's another weakness with pulling it manually into Excel. Because if the scheduling folks in P6 don't do it, the Power BI stuff gets stale. Okay, so that's the other reason that I think you're going to find P6-Reporter has some huge advantages. Now, I mentioned the data calculations and accuracy. Okay, so as I mentioned, some of the stuff that we see as a user in P6 isn't actually a field in the database. It's calculated and displayed to you. So the accuracy is a challenge. When you pull stuff out into Excel, you don't necessarily get it in an easy to use way. And of course, as I mentioned, efficiency. Okay, you don't want a middle person having to be involved in getting reports out. As much as possible, we want to get away from that, because as soon as that person's not there and you need an impromptu meeting and the report's not ready, you get into all sorts of struggles. Okay, it's not efficient. So we want to get into a much more self-serve, automated kind of strategy to make things better for the whole team, because ultimately it's all about the decision making, that you're trying to provide the best data at the appropriate time. So business decisions, good business decisions, are being made, not decisions with stale data. Often updating might be weeks behind. So if you're doing very well in your group, you may be updating, let's say on a large capital project, every week. But more commonly, we see every 2 weeks at best, and so many places only once a month. So you might be using 6-week-old data, making your decisions. And we want to help your groups do better and be able to make business decisions more readily with better data. So let's ask another quick question. How often do you do reporting with your group? Okay, so depending again on the kind of projects you're doing. So daily is turnarounds. Anybody doing a shutdown, an outage, a turnaround, daily is what you need in those kind of projects. You might have, for a huge number of man hours being spent every day. Weekly, if you're on a capital project, monthly, and others. So it looks like quite a few groups are doing well with weekly reporting. Now, the other thing that I've seen is sometimes weekly is updating dates, percent completes, but not necessarily costs. So that's another thing to look at, is how can we improve on our cost reporting. That's where we often have integrations, automations. We have tools to help with that too. So our P6 loader, P6 calculator can be some of those things to explore on that front as well. So some of the benefits of P6-Reporter will be that you control the data flow. Okay, so the snapshots can be done automatically. So some of our clients run automatic scheduling using P6 calculator, and then automatic snapshotting with P6-Reporter, which allows for a consistent approach to pushing the data out to the third-party reporting tools. So it could be daily. If you're in a turnaround, we could definitely do it daily. If you're in a more of a capital project situation, you might let your team do all their updates every Monday. And you might take a snapshot on a Wednesday to give them a day or two to get them in with a data date of the Monday. And then those automatically flow out to the reporting engine, the corporate reporting engine. Okay, so then you've got a controlled, structured approach, and your administrators or super users in P6 just work on exceptions. So If there's loops in the schedule, for example, you won't be able to auto schedule. Okay, so if some of those things are interesting to you, definitely join our P6 calculator webinar. We just did one a week or two ago, but we'll have some more on the schedule because those sorts of things can really work well, especially if you have a large program that you're running. So how does it work? So as I mentioned, we do snapshots. Okay, so a snapshot is similar to taking a baseline, not exactly, because there's certain things that we do with the data to make sure that we've got the spreads, so the monthly, the week, the time-based data, like the resource allocations and the expense allocations. Those are time-based or spread data. So those are the things that are calculated and put on your screen in front of you as you're working. They're not actually in the database. So we have the mechanism to calculate them and store them. We also, so this brings more accuracy. It makes sure that the data is more comprehensive. So we've got all the data, and makes it more flexible when you're outputting to your reporting engine. Now, we have the ability to have multiple snapshots. So that's something Marilyn will show you. So it's not just a baseline, but it's a snapshot, because not every single update necessarily needs to be a baseline. But users of P6 make them baselines because that's the only way they can really look at them. So that sort of limitation that we have in P6 goes away with multiple snapshots. So you could do a comparison of where you were at on your program last year at that time, or the last update cycle, or the contract baseline, whatever way you want to do it. So it gives you the ability to do impact analysis. Okay, and first 5 years of my engineering career was in construction claims and disputes. So I know a lot about doing impact analysis. So this gives you that capability, and you can do some great graphics and outputs using it. And of course, you can compare things. So we snapshot into our data warehouse. So we sell that data warehouse. It's EP Data Warehouse. So it stores the snapshots. Now, not only does it do that, but we also denormalize the data. So we make it easier to work with. Okay, so instead of hundreds of tables like P6 has, we put that into fewer, more readily accessible tables to work with. And as I mentioned, we create the spreads. And then we have our views that go along with it. So we've built what are called data views that are pre-built, that have a lot of the functions that people are asking for already built into it. Okay, so if you want project level data with codes, you want project level data with codes and their titles, we've already built that, so it's a bit easier to access. Okay, and then you push it into your reporting engine, whatever that is. And today, Marilyn will show you Tableau and Power BI. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Marilyn, and she will jump in and give you a deep dive on how you can look at this data in those other tools.
Okay, thank you. The first thing I need to do, of course, is share my screen. Just bear with me a second here, and we will get this going. Okay, so where I'd like to start, we've talked a little bit about snapshots. So I'm kind of starting in the P6 side here, because we're using snapshots to provide the information for the reports we're going to look at in just a few minutes. So when you need to do snapshots, this whole process can be automated. But what happens if I go into my project and I make a bunch of changes and I want those changes snapshotted? You may be working in a scenario where you're trying to compare, for example, mitigation plans. So you can actually go in and create snapshots yourself. So on that note, I just want to show you the report we're going to feed this to first of all. So this is in Power BI. It's what we refer to as a racetrack diagram. Now, this is a project rolled up by codes. So what we can do, depending on what code you need it rolled up by, you can create different snapshots. Now you'll see the one on the top, the report date is October. Then I've got a report date on the bottom of November. So I can compare what's the difference right on the same page. Makes it very visible as to what's changed. Now to create another snapshot, and we'll do December. I realize our dates are a little out of date, but it'll show you what it can do. I always like to show people how easy it is to actually create that snapshot. So if I go back into P6, first of all, I need to go and do my updates, make whatever changes I need to do, whatever the case is, like whether you're doing a mitigation plan or whether you're going in and you're looking for a specific piece of information, depending on what you've got going in your schedule. Now, for what I'm going to do here, there's a couple of items here I have updates on. Now, these particular items, this activity I'm on right now was supposed to end the 8th of June. Well, it's been delayed. So we're going to go in here and put the delay in. So this is now, they're telling me September. I also have another update I need to do on this particular activity, and whatever activities you need to update. I'm not going to update a lot. I just want to show you how easy it is to make your changes. And this particular one is moving out here. Now, of course, once you've made changes, you want to see the effects of it on the rest of your schedule. So I can reschedule it. Now, to create the snapshot, this project could have automated snapshots sitting behind it. We've taken snapshots of it before. You saw them in the report. So to take another one, very simple. All I have to do is, first of all, tell the software which snapshot am I taking. Now, this particular one, of course, we're taking the next month. So that particular one would be, I'm looking for, there we go. I'm looking for my December. And as I said, I realize our dates are a little different, but you could be doing any date, but you pick the date that you want. And now to actually create the snapshot, all I really have to do is set the snapshot run to go. Now I could also take out this message here so that I'll see it repopulating, but it will run even if that message is still there. If a new message gets generated, it's just going to overwrite it. So what we're going to do is let's just take that particular snapshot. And then once we've got that snapshot, we'll look at it in that report we were looking at. So that's really all you have to do. It's not difficult at all. And as I mentioned before, you can have the snapshot process automated. So every day at a certain time, every week at a certain time, depending on the project that you're working on, you would know, of course, what the requirements are. So you can set it that way, very customizable for that. Now, this process is going to, as Nicole was saying, put the schedule information, the new schedule information into a new snapshot. Now, you could export to Excel and things like that, but having very recently worked on a project where the decision was made to do that, and seeing firsthand when they export to Excel, all the reviewing of the Excel spreadsheet, putting it into Power BI, all the going back and trying to figure out, okay, I thought we grabbed the right information. We're not seeing what we thought we would be seeing scenario. I recommended them before, but now even more, I would recommend using EP Data Warehouse, setting your snapshotting up automate it if that's possible. If not, create the snapshots yourself. It is going to save you a lot of time and, of course, a lot of stress too. And that's one of the things I was seeing a lot of on the project that I was recently helping with. So we've got snapshot okay, snapshot's been created. So I'm just going to go back to our report and let's have a little bit of a different look. So I've got October and November. Well, I could just put December here, or what we can do is we can go in and we can change this particular one to show the November if you prefer November and then December. And now I can go in and I can grab that information I just put in there. And I probably need to refresh. And let's do the December. Hmm, very odd. Okay, bear with me one second. I'm just going back. And we did create it. And I'm just going to refresh it again here. This is a bit of a refresh issue, it looks like. We did create the snapshot. It's just not
Okay,
refreshing in our report here.
why don't we
But it
come
is
back to it?
exactly. It is, trying to pull it from the December snapshot. It's just right now saying no data. So there is some other reports in here, but you have seen how easy it is to create the snapshot. So when we go in and look at dashboards, there's a number of dashboards we've got set up here. And what I want people to keep in mind here is these dashboards are customizable. So what you're seeing here is drilling reports. Doesn't matter if you're working on drilling, if you're working on turnarounds, if you're working on whatever type of project you're working on. Having all of this information available in a dashboard is so easy. So your schedulers can be working in P6. You're looking at this information all at the top level. So you can look at things like project days early, late projects, things like that, projects amount over budget, and you can tell right away, is there something I need to look into further? Because that's really the big thing. When you're looking at a portfolio, the first thing you're usually looking for is where do I need to see what's really going on and dig deeper because there's an issue. So this kind of a dashboard is going to give you exactly that. So we've got a few of them. Now, this first one is called Management Dashboard. So you've got your whole portfolio rolled up. Now, you've got milestones because this is drilling, ready to license, permit, final tie-in, those kinds of things. So if I went to my pipeline dashboard, so we've got one specific to the pipelines, you could have resource profiles on it. So I can see by this, I do have in this particular time frame a resource issue coming up. So if I was at that time sitting at the beginning of this time frame, I would have kind of a heads up that, you know what, I need to look at this because there's going to be an issue. And I got all this information without ever opening P6 at all. So if I go into the roads, same idea. You've got an all up dashboard and in the wells as well. So you can create many different types of dashboards, decide what information you want to show in them, and you've got that information showing the latest. So you don't have to flip through reports, look at the report date, worry about, okay, have I got the latest one? That kind of scenario. Now we have portfolio dashboard. Now, the dashboards at the top, you'll notice they're showing you the information, but they're not populated with a number of the filters. So I also have a portfolio dashboard that is actually giving you a lot of different information here. And this one, I can choose what I look at because all these drop downs across the top are all filters. So I've got for the portfolio I'm looking at is our drilling portfolio. I've got upcoming. So what have I got upcoming? It's all being shown to you here. And I've got over allocated resources, something you definitely would be looking for a heads up on. Now, when you go to this middle section gives you a lot of different information. And I'm just going to do my best to get you a little better view here. There we go. So when we're looking at this middle information, you'll notice I've got a slide bar here. So if I slide up and down, you can see I've got color coding here. So it gives you a heads up of what's going on here. Now, there is one project in here that I really do need to have a close look at because this particular project I've been following it. I know there's been some issues, but I want to see, is it getting closer to being on track or not? So that's this facility 2B. So you can see I can click on facility 2B and you can see some of these other portlets in my dashboard change according to what I've got selected. So if I just click back, it will come back to what it was before. So they are connected, they are interactive. I've got some color coding here. So percent complete for December, I'm sitting at 44.8%. You can see 30 days late, that kind of scenario. My labor is over by 120 hours. Well, you may be thinking, and I probably would think that as well. I'd be thinking, okay, I know there was some issues last month, but remind me again, what does that look like? Well, as Nicole said, you've got the other snapshots sitting available. So I can simply click the drop down, go to the November, and I can see for my facility 2B in November, the labor hours were over by 395. The rest of it, percent complete, of course, was less as well, but the negative 30 days for the days, in other words, it's 30 days late. That's what the negative in front is telling you. I can see at least the labor hours have been an improvement. So if I go back to December, and you can go back and forth and compare if that makes things easier. That is available to you. I could filter on the year. I could filter on if I wanted to look at just a particular team, that kind of scenario as well. So you've got the ability to filter in this particular dashboard. Now, as I mentioned, you've got some color coding here. So you'll notice that I've got kind of an orange color coding, and it's lighter in some cases, darker in some cases. Well, of course, where it goes to the dark orange, this one is over by 120 hours. It's trying to give you a heads up that there is some issues on these. But the gradient of the color is trying to give you an idea of how severe is that particular problem. So I've got late and early. So if I go in and I look at this, I've got 19 projects that are early, I've got 12 late, and I've got 40 on time. Now, I've also got projects by PM. So if you're looking at how heavy loaded is any one of our project managers, you've got that information there as well. I've got labor hours by drilling team, and budget hours, status by project and team. So you can look at teams if that's how you operate with your particular projects, and you can see what's going on. So I've got how many are on budget, how many are over and under. So for example, if I wanted to look at facility 2B, like I said before, I can click and it shows me where that falls in that particular graphic that I'm looking at. So in other words, this is the central team. So it is very interactive in that particular scenario. So that's for your portfolio. So if I'm looking at this information, I'm thinking, okay, there is some that I need to dig a little deeper into. So maybe at the surface, and you can see my facility 2B does have an issue. Maybe there's something I want to dig down to more on the project level. I can do that as well. So if I clicked over to project details, now I've got another project up here right now, and we'll look at facility 2B in a second here. But this is giving you project level information. So our portfolio was rolling all the projects together for us. This is giving us project information. So it's telling us percent complete, and then it's giving us information about costs and duration, as well as the list, similar to what we saw before. So if I wanted to go and see my facility 2B, it's simply click the drop down and go and have a look. So as of November, you can see that I've got the information for all of my activities, tells me 40% complete. If I look at costs, it's showing me I've got some overages. So any of these graphics in here, I can hover over them and it's going to show you some more detailed information about it. So total cost, you can see I've got different information in there. So you can get a lot of information out of this particular project detail in regards to how is your project doing. Well, this was November. So again, same thing here. I could go and look at December if that's what I'm looking for. So December shows a little bit different information here, but you can still go through and get an idea of exactly what's going on. Because this is a project level, of course, these are the activities, and they're telling you here with the same color gradients, how are those activities doing? Now, when you're looking at milestones, we've got milestone trending here. And I don't know if you've ever had to produce it. I've had to produce it many, many, many times. Now, you may be looking at where do my milestones sit? Fair enough. You can see where your different milestones sit. Now, we've got codes that tell what milestone type it is. So this is ready for production and it gives you the activities. Now, we can compare side by side as well. So if you're wondering, and this is one I get a lot, is okay, where were my milestones in November versus, for example, December? So you can change to different milestone types in this particular one because we do have codes that indicate what milestone type the different milestones are, but you can change your time frames to look at where the different milestones were. I just changed this one to October and I've got November, which seems a little backwards, I realize, but you got the two side by side. Now, if I want to go earlier date to later date, I can change this back to December. And it gives you side by side comparison. Now, wherever I hover over this gives you some total information in both of them. So you can go to a specific time frame and look at what that looked like last month versus this month, that type of scenario. So it gives you a lot of very visible, very easy to use milestone comparison. And again, I just have to remind everybody, we're not logged in to P6 to get this information. All this information is sitting there, it's all available. Now, if I want to look at resources, there is a resource allocation dashboard here. Now, this resource allocation dashboard, it has the 4 quadrants that are giving you very valuable information. But there's something else I want you to be aware of here, something I find extremely useful here, because we've got overallocated hours, and that's all good. We've got our resource. Right now, we're looking at pipeline crew. So if I wanted to change resource, I could definitely do that. Just hit the drop down, choose another resource. For now, we'll look at the pipeline crew. Now, pipeline crew, these are the projects the pipeline crew is currently assigned to in the bottom left-hand corner. Now, bottom right, I've got the Gantt chart. Now, if I scroll down here, you can see the projects that this resource is assigned to, which is the same list as in the bottom left, but also the activities. So you've got activities over time frames. Where are these resources? When are they required? That type of scenario. But the information that you can get out of this particular dashboard doesn't stop there. So for example, I've got an overload sitting here. If I want to find out, for example, I've got facility 2B. If this is an extremely high profile project and I'm concerned, okay, the pipeline crew I need for facility 2B, I could go and look at the time frame in facility 2B and look and probably see from there, no, it's not in the overload area. However, I can just simply click on facility 2B and it's going to tell me in the profile above exactly where that resource requirement falls. So if I want to go back out of there, I can just click out of there. Now, this is something that you can do with it as well. If I'm looking at facility 2B, and then I'm thinking, okay, I want to know where some of the rest of these are falling in the profile. You can see as I select them, it's showing me where that's being added to the profile. So once I added this particular project, I'm into the overload scenario. So if I wanted to go down and add a few more of these, you'll see that they don't fall where the overload actually is sitting. So you can check out by priority what that's doing as far as your overload goes. And there's another way that you can look at this information as well, depending on what works best for you. I can click on an overload area in the profile. And you'll notice that my bottom half changed here. So my list is going to update and my Gantt chart is going to update. So it makes it very interactive to be able to see what's actually going on as far as any given resource profile. So that particular resource allocation one is very, very interactive. I find this one extremely useful, the rest as well, but this one I have used a number of times. Now, before we go and look at some of the information, we have a few different reports in Tableau. Do we have the refresh ready for racetrack? Just because that report is actually in no, I guess we don't. So I will go over. I was just hoping to show that to you. But I will go over to Tableau because there is some different reports in Tableau that I would like to be able to show everybody as well. We've created some in there. So this is not, of course, Power BI, it's Tableau. So you have a dashboard here that is very similar to what you saw for the portfolio summary in Tableau. you saw it in Power BI, my apologies, and now we're seeing the same type of scenario in Tableau. Now, Tableau, again, is giving you the gradient colors. It's also giving you little indicators here. So it gives you very good information. What do I need to go and have a closer look at? And what's just going along pretty well, and you're going to keep track of it, but it's not something that you're necessarily going to immediately start losing sleep over, that kind of thing. So very similar to what we looked at in Power BI, we've got the report date. This is November. So again, you've got the same thing. I can change it to December as well, and it's going to reflect December information. Now, we've got resource allocation. I'm not going to go through all the details with this, very similar to what you're looking at in Power BI. We've got project detail overview, that type of scenario. And if I put this onto, for example, facility 2B, it'll look a little more familiar. But what I want to show you here is we have what we call green up reports. So we have some green up reports here. And this is something we didn't have ready for display in Power BI. But these particular reports, I kind of have a very, very close affinity to these because I work a lot of turnarounds. This is very common type scenario in turnarounds. These simple little dashboards, little reports, top and bottom, are rolling up what could be a few thousand activities. So this can be literally thousands of activities nicely rolled up by, for example, the relief valve summary is this is rolled up by, is it removed? Is it in the shop? Is it reinstalled? Control valves, okay, disconnected, removed, valve in shop, install, the very common steps you're going to go through for those particular types of scenarios. So part of the reason that I find this one absolutely wonderful is because of the fact I've worked turnarounds. I've lived through the update process where you have a very large printout in a boardroom and people are coming in 15 minutes before morning meetings, that kind of thing. And they're actually manually updating those. And then they go and give the update reports to the scheduler later. But to have people have to actually manually update those reports for discussions is time consuming, it's tedious, and very often you really don't end up with a good picture of what's going on. So these reports will take a very large number of activities and automatically roll them up to show you where you're at according to the steps you need to go through. All without the stress and the hassle and missing updates and things like that that I've seen happen in several different scenarios. Now, once you've got this all neatly rolled up for you, what you can very easily see here, for example, I've got a control valve summary just as an example, and you can see that I've got 100% on the install valve, 100% on the checkout, but there was no update on connecting it. There was no update on disconnecting, removing. So I would be questioning, this may be real, but in which case, why do we have an activity that has remove valve, was never done, that kind of scenario. So you can tell at a glance that you've got some things that are a little kind of out of the sequence that they should be. Gives you the opportunity to very easily ask some questions. Maybe somebody just missed an update, but maybe there's an update halfway through that was put there by mistake, that kind of thing as well. So if I look at, we've got one more here, the exchanger and piping. Same type of scenario, different steps, obviously, because there's different work happening. But this could well be, depending on the size of your project, could be thousands of activities that are now all nicely rolled up into a neat package, showing you the high level information. So you can easily look at this and you can see, okay, where do I need to ask questions? For example, I've got on this very first one, I've got a particular exchanger here that remove components 8%. I've got pull bundle 63%. But inspection of the bundle is done, install components is done, and according to the update, pulling bundle is not finished yet. So you can see some of these things that very obviously, yes, there's some different things that questions need to be asked. Now, last but not least, we have inspection green up. Now, I don't know how many of you have been on projects where tracking the inspections and the completions of the inspections so that you can lead into closing things up, getting things started back up again becomes a bit of a headache. Been there, done that. This is very helpful with rolling things up again. You've got your last inspection update all nicely rolled up. If there's things that don't look like they are tracking the way they should be, good place to start asking some questions. So you don't need to struggle with rolling it up, trying to figure out, okay, which inspections are not complete, so they are going to drive or delay other activities down the line. All that information is there for you. So we have very similar, you can see by the titles, we have very similar other reports here as well that are very similar to Power BI. So before I turn this back over to Nicole, it looks like we do have an issue with our refreshing our snapshot capture, and my apologies for that. So I was so hoping to be able to show you that, but I will turn this back over to Nicole so that she can do the wrap up.
Okay. Now let me just run through the questions that came in just to make sure people had a chance to see them. So the snapshotting was the first question. So once we've done our schedule and our resource update, how do we get the snapshot done? So she did run through how to do snapshot. It's quite simple. We have these project codes that you set and or user defines that come through and tell you what's gone on. So when she did that, it actually takes a snapshot of the project. It could be multiple projects, but in this example, she showed one, but we can snapshot a whole bunch of projects and it can be automated as well. So those are the two methods. Now, depending on what you do in P6, you don't necessarily have to snapshot every set of data. So there are controllers on what you snapshot. And then in terms of how to create the management dashboards. So yes, she is showing you pre-built examples in Power BI. So yes, the P6-Reporter doesn't give you the actual output in Power BI, but we've done a lot of them. So if you want it to work with us, we could certainly help streamline that and make that come together quicker. P6-Reporter gives you the data warehouse piece, the snapshotting that takes place, and pre-built queries that pull the data quicker, okay? Because we've already thought through the kinds of data that people are asking for. What we can't preempt, of course, is your coding structure, right? What are your project codes? What are your activity codes? That sort of data, it's going to change for each client, but we've already got a very quick approach and strategy to get that data into your graphics. Okay, so that you got to allow a few weeks of work. It could be longer depending on how complicated your work is. But let's just say if you're just going for dates, it's pretty quick. If you're going in for resources, earn value, and things like that, could take a little longer. But you need to allow a few weeks of work. and get a little project going, especially if you have multiple projects, okay? Especially if you have multiple projects. Okay, so those were the questions so far. If there are any others, go ahead and throw them in, and we will keep addressing them as we wrap up here. So I'll get back into the PowerPoint, and we'll run through some of the things that we've found from our clients in terms of the benefits that they've received. Okay, so those green ups that Marilyn was showing you are a huge, huge benefit. Now, we specifically have used them on turnarounds, commissioning and startup projects, but they would work equally as well on a building handover, you know, and if you've got detailed work for each one of the trades, you know, a nice building chart for different floors, different areas would work fantastic. Okay, so that application goes a long way. So let's jump into some of the benefits that our clients have brought back to us. Okay, so efficiency, as we talked about. So for the users, not having to push a bunch of reports every time you do an update and make sure you printed all of them and didn't miss any. That brings a huge amount of less stress for the scheduler, but management visibility. So simple to see the data and intuitive. Okay, you don't need to be a P6 expert. You don't need any coaching on a Gantt chart or critical path analysis. You give the data in a way that's very easy to look at. Okay, so if you're in charge of the inspection crew, you know you're reacting to what's going on. You need a very simple way to mobilize your crew to different areas. Okay, so very efficient and accessible. So very easy to understand the data, and it gets the issues focused and readily available. So that one table that Mary Lynn had in the middle with the different color coding, you could actually click on the headers and it reorganizes the list. So you can see what is the worst project and which one you got to look at. Okay, very simple. Make sure you're looking at the problems that are going to cause grief, you know, overruns, delays, that sort of thing. That's really what you're trying to do here. And then, of course, the visibility. So being able to compare real-time, virtually real-time data to historic data, very powerful stuff, right? If you want to understand typical timelines, typical durations, you can do that sort of comparison here. And using Excel only, which in this example, the lead scheduler is saying, this is so much easier. We save a lot more time than using the Excel-based system. Now, in terms of accuracy and being able to dive deeper into the data, okay, so Mary Lynn did show, she didn't specifically highlight it, but there was a CPI, SPI trending curve, okay? That's something that you cannot get out of P6. But understanding your trending on your CPI and SPI and your forecasting is huge because it gives you a different way of looking at where the real problems are. Earned value forecasting, much clearer because you get down right to the crew. In particular, with some of our add-ons and like Calculator, you can store different data as well. Okay, so you can get different kinds of metrics that, particularly with P6 Calculator and snapshotting, that can give you a lot more reach with the data you've got in P6. Okay, so definitely I would suggest that you attend that webinar as well. So I'll touch on a few examples that we've done because they were particularly interesting in terms of the data. So one of the ones that we've worked with is Thales, and it was in their aerospace, defense, transportation type groups. They needed to analyze work that was coming up. So that's what they would call their backlog. and they wanted to compare it against the resource availability. Okay, so that was their big pinch point because of the nature of the work that they did. They have very highly skilled, not easy to get resources. So this was a huge thing for them to be able to see what was coming up, what do we have in terms of our resourcing. And the way that they grouped their data was not simple. It was actually activity codes that gave them the way they grouped data. So that's not easy to do in P6 at all. And it was multi-project, so it was a large program that they were managing. So we created a bunch of special graphics, and they had huge benefit. Didn't have to deal with putting data in and out of Excel, which was very, very error prone. Okay, so that's really the big thing. So they were having immediate self-serve dashboards that they could use to analyze that. And by what that gave them was the ability to also to load up potential work. Okay, so jobs that they were vying for, proposals and business development work. And they could just turn on and off the business development work and stack it up. Okay, so very, very powerful. Not that easy to do in P6. In fact, not doable in P6. P6 Web has some good capabilities with resource reporting, but even in P6 Web, that easy filtering is not readily available. Okay, so this is why putting this kind of data out can be very, very beneficial. And in their case, they wanted to compare back years. So that also is not very easy. Okay, so they wanted to compare May 2022 with May 2021, etc. That kind of thing is not that easy to do without the capability of multiple snapshots. And then Suncor Energy, one of our big long-term clients, we've been working with them since 1999. Some of the green ups that Mary Lynn was showing you, they take advantage of that. They also use the snapshotting to do safety reporting out into their business objects is what they use for their reporting. Okay, so they amalgamate all sorts of different corporate data, push it out to business objects, and the resource data in P6 helps feed some of their safety metrics, reliability and efficiency metrics that they're also monitoring. Okay, so that's a different twist, but using the P6 data and then capturing it into the warehouse and then pushing it out to the business objects is their model. Okay, so I don't see any more questions just now, which is fine. If you do have any, throw them in, and let's hopefully get those answered. So hopefully you saw some interesting food for thought. This is, of course, what we do on a day-to-day basis, so we can certainly help your team. This is just one of many of the tools that we've got in our toolkit. I'd say, I think pretty correctly, we've got the broadest toolkit out in the market to help P6 users. So of course, we've got this P6-Reporter tool. I've mentioned the P6 Calculator tool, which allows you to add all sorts of functions to P6. We've got our P6 Scrubber tool, which lets you import XERs, XMLs, and make sure they don't pollute your database. So that's one of our newer tools, and we've got a lot of traction. So that's a big one. P6 Loader, which lets you push data in and out with Excel. P6 QA, which lets you critique your schedules right inside P6. So we've got a lot of fantastic tools that you should explore related to P6. And we've got such a big toolkit because from our very, very inception, we had programmers on our team because integrations and automations were our focus from the very beginning. Okay, so when we worked with some of our first clients in Ontario Hydro at the nuclear plants, integration was a huge thing, and automating all sorts of data. So it's been our focus from the very beginning. And of course, that's led us to be able to make a great toolkit for our clients. So check out some of our other webinars. Shannon can share our webinar schedule. And of course, we'll keep you on our mailing list to stay in touch. But if you do want to stay in touch a little bit more formally, or you want us to follow up, you can go ahead and let us know by answering this question. If there are specific things you want us to follow up based on, you can let us know. It just makes it so we're staying in touch with you in the most appropriate manner. Okay, now let's see if we have any other questions. Okay. Okay, so Eric is asking a question. I'm a novice using this P6. Please give some ideas on how to start putting together the activities that a planner or schedule have to know. Okay, good question, Eric. And unfortunately, this might not be the right webinar, but I think maybe what we should do, Mary Lynn, is we should get a basic P6 overview webinar on our schedule, Shannon, and invite some of the newer users to that. And we could cover that probably in something like that. Because yes, P6 can be quite daunting because it's a fantastic tool. It's got so much capability. And if you're new, you probably need to be given a little bit of coaching to go in the right direction. So let us take that as an action item. Because really what you're looking at is what I call the layers. Okay, so we've got the enterprise project structure, we've got projects, we've got WBS elements, we've got activities, and the activities subset into 3 pieces. So the resources, the expenses, and the steps. Okay, so you need to understand and get a bit of a game plan for your team on how you use all those layers. Let's take an action item, Shannon and Mary Lynn, to get another webinar in the not too distant future on basic P6 information that we can invite all the participants to. I missed another question. So Bridget asked, do you have any turnaround examples? And yes, we do. So some of that green up stuff that Mary Lynn was showing are turnaround examples. We also showed some drilling examples. We have quite a bit of turnaround examples because we've done work with Nova and Suncor specifically on their dashboards and a few others. So yes, Bridget, let's stay connected and talk about that a bit more. We showed a little bit of that. We also have examples for road work, road construction, for rail work. So one of our clients, CP Rail. So we've got a lot of different resourcing examples. So we do have quite a few. We just didn't show them all in this particular webinar. Okay, so those were some in the questions room. So I think we've tackled all the questions. So certainly if you have more questions that come up after the webinar, feel free to reach out to Donna she's in Philippines. So she's our regional manager there. And of course, you can get in touch with Mary Lynn as well, either by phone or email. And that way we can help your team a little bit more with this key part really to deploying P6, because you do all that great work getting your critical path, maybe even doing risk analysis. And we use Safran for our risk analysis tool now. You do all that great work, but then that data is kind of captured or handcuffed in P6. We got to get it out to the team so they can work with it. That's the key thing here. So this helps close the loop and make that P6 data much more valuable. Okay. So we recently worked with a contractor in Philippines. We were able to put a bunch of cost data in there for them, a huge amount of resource data, different currencies, etc. in there. So now getting all that into a reporting engine is hugely valuable to the team. Okay. Okay, fantastic. So we've run over for a few minutes. I think we'll get set to close up. We'll stay on for another minute or two if people have any questions. I'll stop the recording here.